Welcome to Navigate Now. This is the podcast where we explore the destinations that we're custodians of, the places where we find ourselves in, and how we navigate around those particular environments. So let's get started. I'm John Doxey, your host. The topic for today's episode is effortless navigation, providing accessible information to ease everyday life. So Isaac, thanks for joining us on this episode today. Just like to get just a little bit of an introduction for our audience. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So yes, I'm Isaac Harvey, MBE, and I was born with a disability called limb pelvic hypoplasia, which means I have no upper limbs, I have short legs, weak pelvis, but I use my wheelchair to get around, and I've also got scoliosis, which is the curvature of the spine, and I've been someone who's been very encouraged by the people around me since day one to go out there and live my best life. And that's what I've been able to do, and it's opened up many opportunities to work within the disability community. So I share my lived experience online. I talk about my mental health journey and the things which are out there that can be done with a disability.
So it was your sister that introduced us together.
That's correct, yes.
And when she mentioned about her brother, she mentioned about all the amazing work that you get involved with. So that's absolutely fantastic. So thanks for taking the time out of your day and sharing your knowledge, wisdom, expertise with us and with the audience that we have here at Navigate Now on this particular podcast. Just to get to know a little bit about Isaac.
Sure, yeah.
Is there something fun or something someone knows about you that just gets to know Isaac the person?
I'm someone who likes a bit of an adrenaline, and I like doing things that get me out of my comfort zone.
Cool.
So may that be skiing down the mountains of Colorado, or skydiving at 14,000 feet.
Wow.
You know, I like doing really adventurous things, but I think the one thing a lot of people don't think is possible, and I didn't know it was possible until I've done it, but was wheelchair roller skating.
Awesome.
Where roller skaters push us in wheelchairs, and we do that in different places. So that's a lot of fun.
You're getting to see some good stuff. Well, are you getting to see it, or are you just going too fast?
Sometimes we can get really fast and I don't see anything. It's all like blurred. And
Yeah. What kind of speeds do you get up to?
Oh, we can get some real speed, like 10, 15, 30. So yeah, we can, nice mixture of speeds.
Cool. Just look at your speeding ticket on the way through it.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Cool, brilliant. So thanks very much for joining us on Navigate Now. It's really good to have you with us. So this conversation is all around, as we mentioned on every episode, is all around people and places and how we navigate the world around us. So I just want to, in this conversation, see if we can learn around inclusive environments and their importance. We might pick up on a few real life scenarios, as you mentioned, in the work that you're involved with and sharing your lived experience around all the aspects of your journey so far, and how we can then take those and design better spaces for all the users of environments, whether that's inside, outside, new spaces we've never been to, or spaces we're always using. I think sometimes spaces that we're always using kind of get forgotten about to some degree, because we're there every day.
That's it, yes, it's true.
We often look at a new experience with new light, but often for us, at Clara, in the wayfinding work that we get involved with, it's about those residents that come here every day of the week. How can we make those environments better for those as well? And we'll talk about wayfinding and that connection between those particular two areas as well. So one thing that is a bit of a question for me that I wanted to find out a little bit more about is the difference between navigating inside and outside. Lots of local authorities, who will be the audience of one of the audience segments of this particular podcast, will be, say, a town centre manager, say a highways manager, and they will work to lots of different regulations of what the built environment should look like. Do you see a difference in your own personal lived experience and navigation journey, navigating inside and outside?
Yeah, as a wheelchair user, I'm having to go through different environments all the time. I think the main thing for me when it comes to both indoor and outdoor is the flooring for my wheelchair. Because if it's like a cobbled street, that would really jar my back, and that could cause quite a lot of pain or in my legs. Even when I mentioned earlier about skating.
Yeah.
You know, the surfaces outdoors, even if it's on like a street in London or the Cambridge busway, you know, it's all these different floorings, groundings. And I can feel that with the wheels going over it, especially with skating, we're going at high speeds. I
Yeah.
definitely feel every single bump.
Yeah.
So that's something that really I have to be aware, well, people have to be aware of when it comes to wheelchair users, because sometimes that can really put them out for a week if it's a really bad surface. I find indoor spaces a little more easier to navigate compared to outdoor. Again, there's different terrains that you can't do much with, or going to like a park, that the pavements might be all right, but actually when you want to get into the middle of grass for a picnic, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
So there's all these different factors that become indoor and outdoor. But I think, and with the difficulty of indoor is the space, all the inside furniture. So for example, like a shop, having to navigate through the clothing aisles, or the food, you know, it's got to be quite easy for my wheelchair and the right width to get through to places. So I would say there is a difference between the two.
So coming into what you mentioned there around the indoor side, so the layout of, talking about retail, retail areas there, it's the layout of where we put the point of sale material, where you locate the racks and the shelving, to make sure that a good flow of people with wheelchair requirement and other requirements as well can flow through that space.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it just becomes quite challenging for people.
Can you think of, are there some, I'm sure when I mentioned this, there might be a kind of a memory, you mentioned the Cambridge and your experience there, some really good examples of where you've been to a place where that just worked. That was just a breeze, that was easy. If everyone was like this, life would be awesome.
Oh gosh, wow, you put me on the spot here. I think there's been quite a lot of, I guess you could say like the new Elizabeth line. For myself, is quite easy for me to navigate and be able to get on and off. Well, part of the line that I need assisted with ramps to get on and off the train, but the central part I'm able to get on and off the train without a ramp or any assistance.
Fantastic.
And the flooring on that's really great, and the lifts are easy to navigate for me. But there are some other people, like me in wheelchairs, where there's a bit of a little step to get on and off the train. Now, for me, I'm a bit adventurous. I could do anything. But for some other people, they say, oh, actually, they should have thought about that more ahead of time.
Yes.
So I guess it always boils down to the individual experience when it comes to these spaces. So I might find somewhere really good, but someone else might say a lot different to me.
That's important, isn't it, to talk as a community?
Absolutely.
Because we all come with different situations.
Yeah.
And we all talk on this podcast around as well about something else called situational impairment. So it might be that some point that you are with a group of people. It might be you are having a wheelchair. It might be you have a pushchair. It might be you have a suitcase.
Yep.
And the whole way you navigate might not be the way you did it before. In that other scenario, you by yourself individually, whereas with your group of 10 people with wheelchairs, you're going to need different things.
Yep.
So it's often thinking about that whole journey and that perspective that's important.
So I joined LinkedIn in 2021 to showcase what we were doing with wheels and wheelchairs, and that was kind of the premise of me joining LinkedIn. But when it came around to July being Disability Pride Month, I wrote a post about what it meant to me, and that post went semi-viral, and that really connected me with the disability community and people wanting to hear my story. But as I was connecting with people, I had an opportunity to learn from others, and that really opened my eyes to the different experiences people have, from visual impairments, neurodiversity, all of these different people with different needs. Really was like, okay, I didn't really know much about disability or my own community, but actually listening to others has really allowed me to have that understanding of how people navigate different spaces. So yeah, if I had 10 different people coming with me somewhere, it's a lot that you have to plan ahead for that.
Yeah, definitely. And you can look back at other episodes that we've had on Navigating Now, and we've talked about sight loss, we've talked about elements of for Paralympic athletes around kind of navigating with accessible requirements. So I think it's really important to have that conversation around how we can work together to create spaces that are all beneficial to every one of us, or to the degree where they can be as much as possible inclusive for every one of us. Because what is your experience around historical town centres? You mentioned Cobble Streets. I don't know if the horses and the carriages loved them in the day when they were created or not. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have a choice. But do you see a difference between modern environments and historic environments where we want to keep the legacy of those buildings and that story, but we want to make sure they're inclusive to everybody as well?
I mean, I am someone who does appreciate history, and I think it would be a shame if we were to lose that history, because there's so much. It's just fascinating when you see architecture and how things were built back then. But I also like how there is a mix of the modern as well. I think having that mix is quite interesting and can make a space quite more open to a lot of people. So, for example, I went to Cambridge. I've been to Cambridge quite a lot of times.
Beautiful city.
Oh, it is. It is. But the first time I stayed there recently, and I got to explore actually the central part of Cambridge. Yeah. And the streets were a bit cobbled. The pavements weren't too great, and you really have to navigate your way around there. I even had a little bit of a tour of a university where students stay, and they open it up in the summertime for people to use the rooms. So we went around there, and it was very hard to navigate around. There was a famous statue in the middle, and there was like no way for me to get into there because it was just a step down, so I wasn't able to access everything. So it was, I do have to navigate these historic places, but I do manage. It's just trying to find a way around it.
Were they able to give you, I know kind of if you're living in London, the tube map has accessible icons to show what stations are accessible and not. Have you seen any good examples whereby you can choose an accessible route because you're given specific information?
So I've been traveling for ages now around London, and I know on the top of my head the routes that I can take, even if I have to change plans last minute because of maybe one lift is out or line's down. So I'm able to know what's the best way of me getting around London. But I know for new people, it can be quite challenging if you've come to London for the first time with the different coloured lines and oh, I don't know if it goes this way or that way. And actually, even with the icons, sometimes it's a bit, what's the word? It's kind
misleading?
With you have the blue wheelchair sign and then you have the white wheelchair sign, and one's street to platform and then platform to street, or I can't remember. But
okay, right, So it's not there's not a connected conversation necessarily, of making it really as clear as possible what that is. What would be like maybe one top tip? So if someone was coming to London, say for the first time, what would you tell them to look out for?
I would say definitely speak to the staff at stations. They're very helpful because they really do assist you to get from A to B, and they'll find the most accessible route for you to get to where you need. And what's really good now is, so growing up, for assistance, I would have to have let them know 48 hours in advance.
Okay.
But now I can turn up and go on the underground. So I could say, I want to go to Green Park, and they will tell me the route, or I'll tell them which way I would like to go. And then they'll get me on the train, and then someone would meet me at the other end because I'm not able to use lift buttons and stuff like myself. So I do require someone to meet me at the stations. And even actually coming to this podcast, someone met me off the train and got a ramp out. and then navigated me to the tram, and then we're here now. But
Fantastic.
So it's something that I do. Sorry, that's one advice I would say is just ask the people at the gate lines. They would be very helpful.
That's what we love to talk about on this podcast, is around how people navigate around places. And the thing that always sticks in my head is the London 2012 Olympics. What is great wayfinding? A part of great wayfinding is great people. It's people that are able there with a smile on their face to welcome you to the place, tell the story of the place, but also then to show you where you can go and what you can enjoy in that particular environment. You mentioned lifts, and you mentioned requiring assistance to use those opportunities. What would be one thing that we could do to improve that experience for someone in your situation?
So for me, I can travel independently. I drive my wheelchair with my foot. I can get around most places, but the lift is the one thing I do need help with. And I don't have. Oh no, actually, I think someone did tell me there's technology in maybe America which does this, but voice-activated lifts, or maybe a sensor when you go close to it. Because if that was the case, I definitely would be able to go to more places a lot more easier. But since that's a huge barrier, and when I do travel myself, I do require someone. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because they're usually pretty good. But sometimes I'm not met, and then I have to wait, and then I miss my train, or you know, it can be quite an inconvenience when I can't have that in place. So something like that would make things it'd be life-changing.
Definitely, and that's what I love to have these conversations. So if you listen to this podcast today and you have technology, or you have an intervention that would help people like Isaac in his situation, I think that would be really good to have that conversation as a group, to see how we can start to bring these as a standard into our environment. Because as I'm sure you've seen on your journey, there's been lots of things maybe towards your younger years that weren't standard, but now, not older years in that sense, because we're all young at heart, right?
Yes, that's it.
But become a standard for everybody to enjoy
and be included.
I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. You mentioned, we talked about travel, which is obviously a big part of navigating. We talk a lot about multimodal travel. So whereby today you came on the train and you came on the tram, and we're in this great facility recording this podcast as we speak. And fully accessible building as well, which I think is really, really important to enable us to achieve this episode together today.
And great air conditioning.
And great aircon. Who could live without aircon, right? Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
So how do you see that interplay between using, say, bus, train, tram, tube, that interplay? Because we can't just get to one place with one mode of transport, can we?
Unless you have a lot of money and you can get a taxi everywhere.
Or a private jet or something. Offering aircraft or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, today, I had to get a bus from where I live to my nearest station, then the Elizabeth line, and then the Thames Link, and then a tram. So that's 4 modes of transport just to get to one space. I don't know if it could have been any easier, because I have to go into Central to then come back out again. But each mode of transport definitely has its uses to get to different places. But one thing I should mention is I almost couldn't get on the bus this morning because the ramp came out, but the doors wouldn't open.
Oh dear.
Yes.
And you can't have one without the other, right?
Exactly, yes. And that can be quite difficult, because I wanted to meet you on time, and I had a train booked with my assistants. So, one transport out could really mess up the whole journey. So sometimes it can't be as seamless or spontaneous as you want it to be when down to technology and it breaks down or it doesn't work properly. You're kind of stuck. I can't just jump onto a bus or get on the first train. I always have to rely on the tech or the people to be there to support me. Yeah.
So how was... Just thinking kind of today's experience, how was it getting here to start Croydon in the Creative Digital Lab today?
I mean, overall, it was okay. I mean, that bus situation happened, but eventually worked. And then when I got to Farringdon, they called ahead to say that I was coming, but then no one was there on the platform. So luckily, one of the passengers was going the same way I was, and he helped me all the way to get to the train, which I thought was very nice for him to do that. But otherwise, I would have had to have called the information button to say, oh, no one's met me. And then I would have had to wait for someone to come and get me. And then I definitely would have missed my train because I got there literally by a minute to get on the train. But I would have missed it if it wasn't for that passenger helping me on the way. And then got here and the ramp was ready for me to just get off. So it works most of the time, but sometimes it's a miscommunication and then no one's there.
Yeah.
And then I guess you could say, left stranded.
Sure. Yeah, and it's important to have that connected journey between those modes.
So another thing, because one thing that gives me a bit, I guess you could say anxiety, is in the central stations, I can get on and off myself.
Yeah.
But a place like East Croydon, I have to rely on someone with a ramp. So if I turned up to the station and I see no one on the platform with a ramp, that gets me a bit anxiety, especially if it's not the last stop, because the train's going to close its doors and go to the next stop. I know a trip to Brighton would have been nice, but we had this podcast today.
Next time.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll get the ice cream instead of the aircon.
That's it. Yes. But yeah, it's just make sure that all those things work for me to be able to get to places.
Definitely. And I've listened to, watched you on TV the other night.
Yes.
I know you were on TV on a program about transport.
Yes.
How was that experience using the airlines?
Yeah, I mean, traveling with an airline's a mixed bag. You just don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes it can go as smooth as butter, and there's no problems in getting my wheelchair on, and I have such a great experience. Or alternatively, my chair's too heavy and they don't have the right equipment to get it on, or it's too high and they won't fit through the airplane doors. Or you have rude stewards that was shown in that program who weren't very helpful. So it's such a mixed bag. But because I've had good experiences, and when I do have a bad experience, I know it's not always the case. So that's the reason why I keep on traveling. But for some people, if they have a bad experience flying for the first time or their chair gets broken, that could say, oh, I'm never traveling again. And I think that's a huge shame when there's such a huge world out there to be exploring. And because of someone mishandling a wheelchair, it's such a shame that people just don't want to travel again.
Definitely. Well, remind us of the title. We put the description of that program in the description for this podcast so people can catch up and learn about that and listen to that episode as well.
Sure. So it's Sophie Morgan Fight to Fly, and it's broadcasted on Channel 4. Annoyingly, it's only for UK viewers at the moment, unless you have a VPN. But definitely check out, because I think it came out really well, actually, what was showcased, and seeing other people's experiences as well, and the challenges that they faced, because on that day, it was 3 different flights and 5 people with disabilities per flight, and it was quite interesting.
We spoke about that in our episode already, haven't we? Getting those different perspectives from different types of users, destinations as well, different airports and all those situations. One thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about is where technology plays a role in this conversation around accessibility and inclusivity in navigation. Do you see it working really well? But also, maybe we'll think about stuff that's low tech. Because from my perspective and projects and conversations that we have over the years, it's not necessarily about spending millions of pounds on the latest AI, AR, or the next acronym that's going to come out, whoever knows, in that sense. So low tech sometimes is just as beneficial. Do you see some good examples where technology helps you as you navigate around the built environment? Yeah,
I mean, actually, one thing I saw really cool recently, and this is not for me personally, but I saw one of those electronic boards, and it had someone signing on it, and I'd never
Fantastic.
I'd never seen that before. That was the first time I'd seen that. That was in Victoria Station. and that would help the deaf community a whole lot
A whole load, yeah.
to be able to. I think it's telling which platform was a train or something, or where you could find a certain area. But I thought that was really cool in tech, being able to showcase that so everyone's still included. Lifts for me, I think, is probably one of the biggest thing when it comes to accessing places and being able to get to different floors, or different platforms. I think that technology, and tech has definitely widened my ability to be able to go to different places.
Are there any particular apps or things that you use to be able to navigate around
Yes.
in a seamless way?
Yes, so to get here, I use something called Passenger Assistance app, and that app allows you to basically say where you're traveling from. So it's a train specific app, and basically you can tell people what your needs are. So if you have a guide dog, luggage, wheelchair user, or you may need to be put in those buggies to get from A to B. You can put all that information in this really seamlessly good app, and you say what stations you're going to, what train you will be on, and then it gives them about maybe an hour or so to confirm your booking. And what's really good is you can go to the passenger assistance space in the station, which is in different places.
Yep.
And they have your name there, and you have the time.
Oh, fantastic.
And then both stations know that you're coming, which puts a huge relief on. Because yes, I can go to station and say I want to go to Brighton. We'll say that since we said it earlier. I have to rely on them to have called ahead and know that I'm coming. Whereas on the app, I know it's confirmed, and then someone should know from both ends that I'm going to be there. So I find that to be a lot more relaxing and a lot more allow me to travel, basically.
You mentioned kind of earlier on about the anxiety around travel.
Yes, sir.
I think that's really an important thing to pick up that maybe hasn't been discussed as much over the generations previous, that is prevalent now or becoming more of a normality. I think that's really important, isn't it? Navigation, we can literally look at it from a physical environment point of view. Do we have the right resources on the streetscape design, to the signage, to the accessible doorways, entrance ways, etc., etc.? How can we, from a mental health point of view, ensure that journey is a pleasure rather than a problem?
I think it's removing all the barriers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of barriers sometimes just to get to one place, and it can just be so overwhelming. Like I said, for me, I travel all the time. Still get the occasional anxiety if someone's going to get me off or not. But for some people, like I said earlier, that could really be a put-off to say, oh, I'm never traveling again. And we really don't want to do that to people. So I think it's removing those barriers and being able to make it more seamless than it actually is. And also having people, for some people, having someone every step of the way.
I think as well about providing information.
Exactly.
The right information at the right time. I don't know why I thought about this, but like, say if you're ordering a takeaway off Deliveroo,
Yeah.
or other apps are available,
Yeah.
they provide all the information, or like an Uber. They say that the driver confirms that they're accepted the ride, because sometimes they don't accept, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah.
So your anxiety then is the driver going to accept it?
Yeah.
Your anxiety is relieved by a notification. And then information is provided about where that Uber driver is on their journey. So you can then go and make yourself available. So maybe I'm just thinking out loud now, you can give me your perspective on that. Where you mentioned the app that you use around accessibility and train travel, and just the fact that they've confirmed it is a reassurance to make sure that, yeah, it will work. I'm okay. I'm going to get to the next part of my journey, my destination, or my multimodal sense of travel. So maybe that's something that could be looked at. So just providing the right information, and for the assistant to then click, yep, I'm here, I'm waiting for you.
So
What carriage are you on? That kind of
that's it.
That kind of information.
So I have two things to say about that. Firstly, so I have a Similar app to Uber is called Taxi Card, and that's basically a taxi service catered for those with disabilities. And with that, you can say, "Oh, I need a wide access
Yeah.
taxi. I'm going to this space." And another really good thing about this app is you know how much it's going to be, and that's it. As in, like, it's not based on the meter. You
Okay.
know it's going to be £23 for this journey. So again, removing, oh gosh, I might have to pay £80 for this trip, when
Yeah.
actually it's going to be £23 or whatever it is. So I think, again, knowing what you're going to be paying once the driver's confirmed, it's all like, okay, I'm all ready for this journey now. Obviously, you can't stop things like traffic and things like that happening.
No one can stop that.
But just being in the taxi and knowing you're going to get to your destination, I think, is the most major thing, really. And the second thing I was going to say about that is, one thing people forget, and something I do mention quite a lot, is when it comes to accessible places or venues, it's the journey. It's the journey to get there. I mean, you could have the most amazing building like today.
Yeah.
But for me, I've had to take 4 modes of transport to get here.
Yeah.
So I think it's sometimes remembering that it's the journey for someone to get to, because it could have stressed me out today. And then this conversation, I would have been stressed. I would have not been able to give you good answers. But if it was much easier for someone, they could have had a more relaxed and more focused on being able to speak. So I think it's important to remember it's the journey when it comes to venues and navigating around.
We always talk about the pre-visit part of a wayfinding experience. Is exactly what you mentioned there. Where have you seen, and I think it goes back to information that we've just spoken about, is providing the right information to be able to have the right journey and arrive in the right frame of mind, but also ready for what you're there at that destination to do, whether you're there for shopping or for entertainment, or for, some people look at shopping as entertainment, some people look at it as the opposite, or whether you're there, say, for a doctor's appointment or a hospital appointment, etc., etc. Where have you seen venues, and I often want to make sure that listeners to this podcast can have one thing that they can take away and review in their own place that they're a custodian of. What would you say? What would you send them away, our audience away with, to look at on their pre-visit journey to make sure they're providing the right information?
I think one key takeaway, and I think this is probably the most important, is having conversations like this, speaking to those with lived experience, because everyone's experience is going to be so different from one another. And don't base it off assumptions, because sometimes that could be more damaging.
Yeah.
When you assume that, oh yeah, if it's a wheelchair user, they need this specific ramp, but actually you order that ramp and it's too steep,
Yes.
or you won't
Yeah,
be able to get up it, or the door width is too small, and all these different factors that could be put in play and avoided if you actually spoke to someone. So I think just having those conversations like we're having today, a very open, honest dialogue, I think that's how you can really learn from people, is the lived experience.
100%. I'm a big believer in sharing experiences and listening.
Yeah.
We've got 2 ears.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
In
yes.
that proportion, right?
Yeah.
To listen and to learn from each other on those particular side of things. I think that's really important to get those perspectives. So, technology, we talked a little bit about that. Is there anything else that you think that we would all, as custodians of places, really benefit from? I think the big thing for me is information provision. Providing the right information, whether we're a venue custodian, whether a town centre manager, local authority, highways manager, etc., etc. And it's really important to provide the right information. We were working in a scenario where you had a destination, which had about 15 entrances. Some were accessible and some weren't. Some could have been retrofitted, some extremely difficult. So providing the right information, that was an accessible entrance and that wasn't. Going back to what you mentioned about the tube, does that pictogram mean accessible to street or accessible to platform? I mean, that's really important to get that as clear as possible, isn't it?
Yes, I've got one prime example that I did recently. So I was going to one of those art immersive exhibitions.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of them now. They've popped out of nowhere. But I went to one in Canary Wharf, and I went on the website because some of them, they outright say you can access the bottom floor, but actually you can't go up because it's an old building, which is fair. At least they tell you from the start.
Yep.
So I went on the website for this exhibition, and it said that this place is wheelchair friendly, but no, it's wheelchair friendly, and we're very committed to making things accessible. However, it's not accessible for electric wheelchairs and scooters. And I thought it was kind of a mixed thing
Message.
to say. Yeah, mixed message in that. But me being me, I was like, I'm just going to go there and see if I actually can or not, because that's where I was going to meet my friend anyway. So I thought, let's just go there and ask. So I got there and I said, okay, can I come in? And without hesitation, they said, yeah, of course. And I thought, okay, this is a bit strange. So I said...
I've read the website.
Yeah. So I said to them, oh, you sure my electric chair can come in? They said, yeah, of course, that's fine. And then I said, oh, do you know on your website it says that you don't allow electric wheelchairs? They said, really? Does it say that?
Okay.
And they, even that person I spoke to a colleague, and they didn't know it was on the website.
Okay.
And they said, oh yeah, this is the first time we've heard about this. And they said, we've had electric wheelchairs here all the time, which have accessed this place. So they were really confused about me questioning it. So obviously that information wasn't relayed to the staff. But when I emailed, they said, oh yeah, the staff only gave you an exception this time. And I said, no, they didn't. They just didn't know that you...
Yeah. That goes back to information again, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's take a nugget from that then. What would be the top tip for someone on their website? Because you're going to do some research before you go to a destination. What information are you looking for to be available on the website? Obviously the correct information. That kind of goes without saying,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But what kind of information are you looking for that custodians of places could very easily, today, after listening to this podcast, review what they've got on their website and maybe add some top things that you're about to tell them about?
I think for me, when I'm looking for a place or where I'm going, it's transport and if I'm actually able to access what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Those are the two main things I'm looking for when it comes to it. Like food and other things are second. It's the actual getting there and actually accessing what I'm going for.
Yeah, brilliant, cool. Oh, there's amazing things that we've spoken there about on this particular episode. I think there's loads that we can all learn from.
Yes, that's it.
And you live that experience, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to share that experience with us and with the community that we have on this particular podcast. One question maybe just to finish off.
Okay.
If that's okay. If you could change one thing, what would it be? But for me, more importantly, what impact would it have on your experience?
I think for me, it's changing people's attitudes to realizing that accessibility is for everybody. Because once a place is accessible, everyone can enter through that door or get into that space. I think it's so important because people think accessible, oh, that's someone with a disability, or oh, it's just for a wheelchair user. But actually, we all need some form of accessibility to be able to get to places and be able to do things. And also realizing that anyone at any given time can gain a disability at any time through an accident or health condition or age. So I think it's something that should be spoken about more, and have that shift in narrative of disability being shift in accessibility, where people are saying, oh no, that's just a disability thing. No, it's everyone's thing.
And celebrating that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a positive thing, yeah.
And someone's got 3 letters after their name.
That's it, yeah.
Just to finish off, celebrating and raising awareness of that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about a little nugget, kind of how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, really, because for me, I don't really do things for awards or recognition. I kind of do it for the community and and myself really to push myself out of the boundaries and comfort zone to see what's actually possible. And I guess through that, I've been recognized for it to be able to get an MBE, which is a high prestigious
Congratulations.
award. Yes, thank you. And it was presented by King Charles himself.
Perfect.
Where he congratulated me for my work and told me to keep doing what I'm doing. So, I'm doing this. I think that's a reflection of what the community can achieve, not just me. I mean, this is what the community can achieve if you put your mind to it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. It's a privilege and an honour
Of course,
to have
yes.
this episode with you today, Isaac.
Yes.
And we're just looking forward to continuing that conversation, building that community. And I'm sure together as a group, we can make the world a better place to live in, make it more accessible, make sure the places and the people that we work around can enjoy those places as one together. So thanks very much for today.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I think it's important to have these discussions and conversations because that's how we have a better understanding of people by having this open dialogue. So thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Isaac. So thank you for listening to Navigating Out. This is the podcast where we talk about people and places and how we navigate around the built environment. So we're building that growing community, as we've discussed in this episode, around people and places and the custodians of those individuals. So join this growing community by liking, sharing, subscribing to this particular episode and be part of this continued conversation. Thank you very much.